For 50 years, Elvis Presley rested undisturbed inside his tomb at Graceland in Memphis, Tennessee. His burial site in the meditation garden, surrounded by the graves of his parents and grandmother, was meant to be a place of permanent peace. It was a final sanctuary for the man who changed music forever. But half a century after the king was laid to rest, something began happening at Graceland that no one could explain. Cracks appeared where there should not have been any. The ground shifted in ways that defied every geological model. When scientists finally decided to open Elvis Presley's tomb, what they found inside left the forensic world stunned. The king was supposed to be resting, but something inside that tomb told a very different story. Elvis Aaron Presley didn't just become famous. He became the blueprint for fame itself. From his first appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show to his legendary concerts at the Las Vegas International Hotel, Elvis captivated audiences with a presence that felt almost otherworldly. He sold over 1 billion records worldwide, starred in 31 films, and earned the title that no one before or since has truly inherited: the King of Rock and Roll. But behind the rhinestone jumpsuits and the sold-out arenas, Elvis was fighting a battle the public rarely saw. Years of grueling tour schedules, prescription drug dependency, and declining health had taken their toll. On August 16, 1977, Elvis was found unresponsive on the bathroom floor of his Graceland mansion. He was pronounced dead at Baptist Memorial Hospital in Memphis. He was 42 years old. The world stopped. Fans gathered outside the gates of Graceland by the tens of thousands, many collapsing in grief on the front lawn. His funeral procession stretched for miles through the streets of Memphis, lined with mourners who had traveled from across the country just to say goodbye. Elvis was initially buried at Forest Hill Cemetery alongside his mother, Gladys. But just weeks later, a group of men attempted to break into his tomb and steal his body. The plot was foiled, but the damage was done. The Presley family made the decision to move Elvis and Gladys to the meditation garden at Graceland, where they could be protected on the estate grounds indefinitely. For decades, that decision held. The meditation garden became one of the most visited private grave sites in the world. Over 500,000 people walked through those grounds every year, laying flowers beside the bronze plaque that simply read his name and the dates bookending a life that had reshaped American culture. The tomb stayed sealed, the garden stayed quiet, and Elvis rested. Until 50 years later, when the quiet ended. It started the way these things always start, with something small enough to ignore. Groundskeepers maintaining the meditation garden noticed hairline fractures forming along the stone pathway surrounding Elvis's burial marker. At first, they assumed it was weather damage. Memphis summers are brutal, and decades of temperature swings can wear down even the strongest stonework. They patched the cracks, made a note in the maintenance log, and moved on. But within months, the cracks returned, and they were worse. The fractures were not just resurfacing in the same locations, they were spreading outward in a pattern that radiated from a single point: Elvis's tomb. Graceland's management brought in structural engineers to assess the foundation. What they found did not match any standard deterioration model. The shifting was not happening across the meditation garden as a whole. It was isolated entirely to the area directly above and around Elvis's burial vault. The surrounding graves, including those of his parents and grandmother just a few feet away, showed no signs of movement whatsoever. The engineers ran ground-penetrating radar beneath the surface, expecting to find a cracked drainage pipe or a collapsed section of soil. Instead, the scans revealed displacement beneath the tomb itself. The burial vault had shifted from its original position, not by much, but in a structure designed to remain fixed for centuries. Even a fraction of an inch was significant, and the source of the movement could not be traced to anything in the surrounding earth. That's when the calls started going out to specialists. Over the following weeks, a quiet assembly of forensic geologists, soil mechanics experts, and preservation scientists arrived at Graceland. They worked discreetly, often after the estate closed to public visitors. Their task was straightforward: find out what was causing the structural anomalies at Elvis Presley's tomb, and determine whether the site could be stabilized without opening it. One by one, the most logical explanations were eliminated. There had been no seismic activity in the Memphis area strong enough to cause subsurface displacement. The water table beneath Graceland had remained stable for decades. Core samples from the soil surrounding the vault showed no evidence of erosion, root intrusion, or underground animal activity. The geology of the site was unremarkable, clay and limestone consistent with the rest of the region. But the displacement was real, and it was continuing. Each new scan showed the vault shifting incrementally, as though something within the tomb was exerting a slow, persistent force on the structure. The forensic geologists had seen ground movement thousands of times across their careers. They had never seen anything like this. The conversation shifted from preservation to intervention. If the vault continued to shift, it risked cracking the casket itself. And if the casket was compromised, exposure to groundwater and air could accelerate decomposition of the remains inside. The experts were no longer dealing with a curiosity. They were dealing with a ticking clock. The Presley estate was notified. The request was simple but carried enormous weight. The tomb needed to be opened. The response from the family was immediate and firm. Absolutely not. Elvis's burial had been sacred. The move from Forest Hill to Graceland had been traumatic enough. The idea of disturbing him again, 50 years later, was something the family had never imagined they would be asked to consider. But the engineers and preservation scientists presented their findings methodically. The scans, the measurements, the rate of displacement over the preceding months. They explained that without intervention, the structural integrity of the burial site could fail entirely. And if that happened, the consequences would be far worse than a controlled, respectful opening. The negotiations lasted weeks. The family set conditions that were non-negotiable. No media presence on the grounds, no photographs of the remains released publicly. Only essential personnel on site, and every step documented but kept confidential. When the tomb was resealed, it would be reinforced with materials designed to last another century. And above all, Elvis Aaron Presley would be treated with the same dignity he had been given on the day he was buried. The estate agreed. A date was set. And for the first time in half a century, the seal on the king's tomb was about to be broken. The morning they opened the tomb, the meditation garden was closed to all visitors. A perimeter had been established the night before. The only people on the grounds were the forensic team, 2 estate representatives, and a small group of structural engineers. No one spoke louder than a murmur. The removal of the outer memorial slab took over an hour. The team worked in careful, measured increments, using hydraulic lifts designed to distribute pressure evenly across the surface. When the slab finally separated from the foundation beneath it, a low grinding sound echoed across the garden. Several members of the team paused involuntarily. Then came the first anomaly. As the inner seal was broken, a rush of cold, dry air escaped from inside the vault. The team had expected the interior to be stale and damp after 50 years underground. Instead, the air was startlingly cool and carried almost no moisture. One of the forensic geologists later described it as stepping into a climate that should not have existed underground. The vault itself had shifted roughly 2 centimeters from its original alignment, enough to be visible to the naked eye once the outer layer was removed. The interior walls of the chamber showed no cracking, no water staining, and no biological growth of any kind. For a 50-year-old burial vault in the humid Memphis climate, the conditions inside were inexplicable. When the team reached the casket, they found it tilted at a subtle angle, resting against the interior wall in a position that did not correspond to how it had been placed during the original burial. Something had moved it, but the vault showed no signs of external force, no evidence of ground intrusion, and no indication that anything from outside had entered the chamber. The lead forensic pathologist directed the team to proceed with opening the casket. Every hand in the garden went still. What they saw inside changed the tone of the entire investigation. Elvis Presley's remains were remarkably intact. After 50 years underground, the forensic team had expected advanced decomposition consistent with half a century in a temperate climate. Instead, the tissue preservation was extraordinary. Facial features remained distinguishable. The structural integrity of the remains far exceeded any model the pathologists had worked with. Elvis had been embalmed before his burial in 1977, following standard mortuary practices of the era. But embalming fluids typically lose their preservative properties within a decade under normal conditions. 50 years of preservation at this level was outside the boundaries of known forensic science. The team collected samples from the interior of the casket, the surrounding vault material, and the soil beneath the chamber. And that is when they found it. A dark, hardened substance embedded in the lining of the burial chamber, concentrated near the base of the casket. It had a rough, crystallized surface, almost mineral in appearance, but its composition did not match any known geological deposit in the Memphis region. Initial field analysis could not identify it. It was not calcium buildup. It was not mineral leaching from the vault walls. It was not a byproduct of the embalming chemicals reacting with the casket lining over time. The forensic geologists had seen unusual formations in burial sites before. They had catalogs of what time and chemistry can produce underground. This did not match any of them. Samples were sealed and sent to 3 independent laboratories for further analysis. In the weeks that followed, the scientific community worked through every plausible theory. The leading explanation centered on the unique soil composition beneath Graceland, where a dense layer of limestone and clay may have created an unintentional microclimate inside the vault. This natural seal, combined with the airtight casket design and the embalming techniques used in 1977, could theoretically have slowed decomposition to an extraordinary degree. The crystallized substance was tentatively identified as a rare mineral formation, potentially the result of trace metals in the casket hardware interacting with the limestone-rich groundwater over decades. But the identification remained inconclusive. 2 of the 3 laboratories flagged the samples as requiring further study. The composition did not perfectly align with any previously documented formation. The tomb was reinforced with modern preservation materials and resealed under the supervision of the forensic team and estate representatives. Monitoring equipment was installed beneath the surface to track any future shifts. The meditation garden was restored, and within days visitors returned to lay flowers beside the bronze plaque, most of them unaware of what had taken place just beneath their feet. The Presley estate released a brief statement acknowledging that maintenance work had been performed at the burial site and that the tomb had been reinforced for long-term preservation. They did not mention the opening, the findings, or the ongoing laboratory analysis. Elvis Presley once said, "Truth is like the sun. You can shut it out for a time, but it ain't going away." For 50 years, his tomb kept its silence. And when it finally spoke, even the scientists did not have all the answers. The king rests again. But the questions remain. Do you think opening the tomb was the right call, or should Elvis have been left undisturbed? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this story left you thinking, hit subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.